Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are getting into something that is uh, really transforming modern hiring. We're talking about artificial intelligence and talent acquisition. It promises this, revolution, faster screening, more consistency, data-driven decisions that are supposed to cut out all that subjective human error.
But that promise of perfect efficiency and objectivity, it comes with a really serious, almost structural challenge.
Right.
We know AI is great at prediction. The danger, though, is that it just perpetuates or, even makes worse the kind of systemic unfairness we already have.
Especially for groups that have been marginalized in the workforce for a long time.
Exactly. So you see organizations caught in this fundamental conflict. On one hand, they want maximum predictive accuracy. But on the other, there's this ethical need for fairness.
And that's our mission for this deep dive, really. We're looking at research that focuses right on that dual challenge.
So we want to understand the architecture of designing a bias-aware AI hiring algorithm, see how organizations are trying to walk that tightrope. To start, we really have to clarify these two objectives because they often, well, they pull in different directions.
Okay.
So on one side, you've got the business need, accuracy.
Building models that reliably pick the winners.
That's it. Identifying candidates who will actually perform well, who will fit the role. It's about maximizing your return on the hire.
And then on the other side, we have fairness.
Which is the ethical and, frankly, the legal requirement. It means treating all candidate groups equitably.
So the algorithm can't penalize someone based on their race, gender, age, anything like that.
Correct. And the tension really kicks in when you realize the algorithm isn't starting from scratch. It's learning from our past.
And this is the crucial part, isn't it? If the historical hiring data you feed the machine, if it's based on decades of human decisions that, say, favored men in early tech roles.
The algorithm doesn't see that as bias.
No.
It just sees that pattern as the definition of success.
So it just reproduces it.
Exactly. It reproduces what it thinks is a successful hire based on the data it was given. And because it's AI, it does this at scale, exponentially faster than any single hiring manager ever could.
And the research you're looking at confirms this isn't just a theory.
Right, not at all. It shows that specific AI tools already out there have demonstrated measurable, quantifiable bias in how they rank people by race or gender.
So that leaves us with this paradox. How can a company hire the right people, maintain that predictive validity, while also meeting fairness criteria that, regulators and candidates will accept?
It's the central question. And treating fairness as just some add-on after the fact, that's almost guaranteed to hurt your accuracy.
It has to be baked in from the start.
It absolutely does. And
Yeah.
before we get to the fixes, we have to know where the bias is even coming from. The research points to four primary sources, 4 ways unfairness gets into the system.
Okay, let's unpack those. Where does it start?
Number 1 is the one we just touched on, bias training data.
The historical data is skewed.
Right. If your past hiring data overrepresents certain groups as successful, the algorithm just learns a warped version of the labor market. It basically favors the majority group because it doesn't have enough good data to evaluate anyone else.
Okay, so that's source one. The second one sounds a lot sneakier, proxy variables.
They are much harder to spot. These are variables that aren't obviously about race or gender, but they correlate so strongly with them that they act as a stand-in.
Like what, for example?
Think about something like a zip code. Seems innocent, but it can be a very strong proxy for race or socioeconomic status.
Or maybe the name of a very exclusive, expensive university.
Absolutely. The algorithm isn't told to discriminate, but if you leave these proxies in the data, the model just learns the protected characteristic through a backdoor.
And the third source is more about the design itself.
Really?
What the research calls algorithmic or measurement bias.
This one is critical. It's about the choices the designers themselves make when they decide what success even means.
How so?
Well, the sources give a great example. Valuing years at company as a key metric for success. On the surface, that sounds neutral, right? Loyalty.
Sure, sounds reasonable.
But that choice systematically disadvantages really qualified people who took career breaks.
So often women who paused for caregiving or parental leave.
Exactly. By valuing that one metric longevity, the system immediately builds in a bias against a specific demographic based on, common life choices.
That's a perfect example of how a technical choice has a real human impact. Okay, so what's the fourth and final source?
The fourth is less about the data and more about accountability. It's opacity and lack of oversight.
The black box problem.
That's it. When an algorithm screens out a candidate and no one not the hiring manager, not the candidate, can understand why, trust just collapses.
And that must be a massive legal risk.
A huge risk, especially under employment discrimination law, because you can't even defend how the decision was made.
So, if the problem gets in through the data and the design, what do the solutions look like? This sounds like a pretty massive undertaking to fix.
It is. It requires a whole new way of thinking, really. Treating algorithm design not as a one-off project, but as a continuous ethical life cycle. The research lays out a very rigorous, multi-step approach.
Let's start at the beginning of that life cycle then. Strategy 1 seems foundational, explicitly defining fairness criteria.
You have to. You can't build a fair system if you haven't decided what fair means for your organization.
Because there's no single definition.
Right. And this is what makes it so complex. You have to choose. Are you aiming for, say, equal selection rates? So the percentage of people hired from Group A has to equal the percentage from Group B.
Or something else.
Or maybe you focus on equal predictive error rates, which is about balancing who you mistakenly hire versus who you mistakenly reject across different groups. The choice really matters.
Okay, so once you have that definition, what's next?
Yeah.
Strategy 2 is auditing and cleaning the data.
This is where you directly attack those first two bias sources we talked about. Before you even train the model, you have to go through the data, find the skewed representation, and actively drop or reweight features that are acting as proxies.
You're manually cleaning up history in a way.
You are. Then you get to the heavy lifting, the technical side. Strategy 3 is about using specialized, fairness-aware modeling techniques.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting.
It is. Instead of just telling the model to maximize accuracy, you use techniques that build fairness right into the math. One is called adversarial debiasing.
So it's like the algorithm is fighting with itself.
That's a great way to put it. One part of the model tries to predict job success. A second, adversarial part, tries to predict the candidate's protected class, their race or gender, from the same data.
And the system gets rewarded for one and penalized for the other.
Exactly. It's rewarded for predicting performance, but penalized if it can identify the protected class. It forces the model to ignore those signals.
What about something like constrained optimization?
That's more like a guardrail. You're telling the algorithm, okay, maximize accuracy as much as you can. But you absolutely cannot let the selection rate for Group X fall below a certain percentage.
You're setting hard boundaries on the outcome.
Hard ethical and legal boundaries before it even starts running.
All right, so strategy 4 brings the person back into the process, maintaining human-in-the-loop oversight.
This is absolutely essential for trust, for legal defense. The research is very clear that AI should assist human judgment, not replace it entirely.
So being transparent with candidates that AI is being used.
Yes, and crucially, having a human manager review borderline cases that the algorithm flags, that provides a critical safety net.
And this can't be a one-and-done thing. Applicant pools change. Which brings us to strategy 5, continuous monitoring and auditing.
Models drift. You cannot set it and forget it. You have to constantly track the outcomes by demographic, by accuracy, by your fairness metric.
So if fairness for one group starts to decline after 6 months?
That's an alarm bell. It means you need to retrain the model and audit your data pipeline immediately.
And the final strategy, number 6, is about accountability, transparency, and aligning stakeholder values.
Explainability is just non-negotiable here. You have to be able to articulate how the AI influenced a hiring decision if you're challenged on it. That's the bedrock of trust.
Which brings us to I think, the most difficult part of all this, the ethical reality. Even with all these strategies, the research points to a hard choice, doesn't it? A trade-off.
Yes, it can, and this is where it gets fascinating. The difficult choice is that in some cases, when you really enforce a fairness constraint like equal selection rates, you might see a slight measurable dip in the model's overall predictive accuracy.
And that's the core tension for a business, right? How do you justify accepting even a small drop in predictive power in exchange for more equity?
It becomes a conscious decision about values, you have to ask.
Yeah.
Is that marginal loss in predictive accuracy an acceptable price to pay for not replicating past prejudice? Are you choosing integrity over a tiny performance gain?
But the research also suggests it's not always a zero-sum game.
And that's the most hopeful finding. It suggests that with really thoughtful design, using all 6 of those strategies, you can often achieve both high accuracy and near parity across groups. You can minimize that conflict.
But the key word there is thoughtful. It doesn't happen if you just buy an off-the-shelf tool.
Absolutely not. Companies have an ethical responsibility here. They have to ensure their algorithms don't just put a shiny technical mask on old biases. Fairness isn't a secondary concern, it's central to integrity.
So, to summarize for you, designing these bias-aware AI hiring systems means treating fairness and accuracy as intertwined goals from day one. It requires clear definitions of fairness, aggressive data auditing, specialized modeling techniques, and crucially, human oversight through the whole process. It's a strategic and ethical necessity.
And as you think about how quickly these tools are being adopted everywhere, consider this final thought. If the real danger of AI in hiring is that it perpetuates inequality under a guise of objectivity, what metrics beyond just hiring a high performer do you believe are most critical for defining success in a truly equitable hiring process?